Good evening, universe. Tonight I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in November, December, and January. I'm kind of combining them all because I, for one, am behind on my wrap-ups, and for two, I didn't really read that much in November and December, so I figured I would just combine them and let you know what I thought about all of them now. So back in November, I only read two books. The first was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I really enjoyed this, even though I took quite a bit of time reading it. I loved the characters. It ended up on my top 12, I think, of the year. So it's about this girl who was raised in a magical library, and the library contains grimoires, which are these magical books that sorcerers learn from. And the grimoires are dangerous because if they are mishandled in any way, they can become a monster. So our main character, Elizabeth, wants to be a warden, somebody who takes care of the books and fights the monsters if they happen to arise. She is distrustful of magic and especially of sorcerers, so of course she ends up having to work with one. And in this world, sorcerers get their powers from demons, deals with the demons, and so this sorcerer that she ends up having to work with has a demon, and so the story is about her dealing with the sorcerer and the sorcerer's demon and trying to figure out this mystery that unfolds before her. It's a really fun YA fantasy. It was super enjoyable. Like I said, the characters were fantastic. The pacing was great. The mystery was wonderful, but really I would recommend it on the basis of the interactions between the characters. That I thought was really the highlight. Next, I reread Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the first book, The Lightning Thief. This was really fun. It was really nostalgic to go back to it. This is my first time rereading it. I first read it when I was 18, I think, and so it has been a while. There were a couple of little things here and there that I felt didn't age super fantastically, but for the most part, it was a really fun, nostalgic, good time. Just like last time, it drew me in. I read through it super quickly. Even though I knew what was going to happen, I felt compelled by the mystery. It's just a good time. Percy Jackson is wonderful. I am a huge fan of the series, and I really enjoyed it. I am really looking forward to the new TV show that's going to be coming out on Disney. I have never seen the movies. I am not a big fan of movies to start with, and I have not heard great things about these. But I was thinking about giving them a try just to see what they're like. So maybe that'll happen. And those were the only two books that I read in November. Things were kind of getting intense with school, so I wasn't reading that much. And the same is true in December. I also went on vacation in December, which means that I didn't have as much time for reading because I really like to be at home and in my own space when I'm reading. So since I was out and about on vacation, I really didn't do any reading. So the only book that I ended up reading in December was Gideon the Ninth. This was another one that made my top 12. I absolutely love it. It's about necromancers in space, essentially. More specifically, it's about Gideon, who is not a necromancer, but she lives on a planet with the only other girl her age, the only other person her age is a necromancer and kind of the princess of the planet. She's known as the Reverend Daughter. Her name is Harrow. She goes by Harrow. And she is a powerful necromancer. She specializes in bone magic. Harrow wants to be a lictor, which is kind of like an immortal being who serves the god of this world, the emperor. Gideon wants nothing more than to get off her miserable planet, which is dark. There's nobody her age. Everybody is old and grumpy and dowdy. And Gideon hates it. Gideon is irreverent and rowdy, and she wants to be free of this place. So she gets a chance to do that when Harrow gets a chance to become a lictor. There is going to be a kind of competition on another planet, and the thing is that Harrow needs a cavalier, which is like a sacred bodyguard, to accompany her. And the current cavalier that she has is a useless coward who does not want to serve her. So instead, Harrow asks Gideon to do it. These two absolutely despise each other, but since this is the only way to get what they want, they fall into this agreement. They go to this other planet, and sort of a sci-fi necromantic mystery unfolds from there. Like I said, I absolutely loved this. The narrative style is fantastic. It's really fast-paced. It definitely doesn't hold the hand of the reader, so there will be chunks when you don't really know. At least for me, there were chunks when I didn't really understand the world building, but then it fell into place the more that I read. And it was easy to do that just because the narrative style was so compelling and fun. This is an adult fantasy with sci-fi flavor, I guess I would say, and I absolutely loved it. Highly recommend. I also have another video about it that goes into spoilers and goes a little bit more in depth into my thoughts. And that was the only book that I read in December. So in January, I had a little bit more time off of school, and so I read 3 books. One of them was actually a novella, and that was Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. I really enjoyed most of this book. I absolutely adored it. I thought it was going to be a new favorite novella, and it definitely was one that I really loved overall. But there was one thing that happened that really did not sit well with me, that did not make sense to me personally. This one kind of important decision that the character makes near the end of the book was a little bit, like I said, it didn't fully make sense to me. However, overall, this was a fantastic read. The pacing was really good. It's about this supernatural private eye who used to be involved in like the more official wizarding situation in this world, but was for some reason removed from it. And you find out why eventually, of course, but I don't want to give that away. I also don't want to say too much because this is pretty short, and so the reveals come quickly. But this book is also queer, which I really enjoyed. The main character is a lesbian, is in a committed relationship with a woman, which I really liked seeing. I absolutely loved their relationship. I thought it was really cute, really satisfying. It's an urban fantasy that takes place in, I want to say, the 1940s. And if you like an urban fantasy, I really highly recommend it. The fantastic elements are, of course, like I mentioned, wizards, but we also have demons and angels, which are elements that I really enjoyed. And overall, I really liked this novella. Like I said, it's a pretty quick read because it's so short. So if you enjoy urban fantasy, I definitely highly recommend this. Next, I continued with the Locked Tomb series, which is the series that starts with Gideon the Ninth. So next I read Harrow the Ninth. I really enjoyed this one as well. January was a good reading month for me. It's hard to describe this book without giving any spoilers for Gideon the Ninth, but essentially this follows Harrow more closely and her grappling with her necromantic powers in a new way. After that, I read Nona the Ninth, which is even harder to talk about because it's the 3rd book and because of the way that this series is set up, but I really enjoyed Nona as well. This follows a new character named Nona who has not been introduced in the other books, and we get kind of a new setting as well with this one, but it takes place in the same world and follows the events of Harrow the Ninth. This one definitely felt different than the other 2. It has a different narrative voice for the most part, but I really enjoyed this one as well, and I can't wait for Alecto the Ninth, which is supposed to be the ending of this series. Unfortunately, we don't have a release date on Alecto yet, but I'm really hoping that it comes out sometime this year. I'm also planning to do a reread of this series just because there is a lot in this series to kind of unpack and reread it. There are lots of little breadcrumbs throughout the series I think that the author has planted, and I really enjoy this series so far, even though it is so strange, possibly because it is so strange. I really highly recommend the Locked Tomb series, like I said, even though a lot of people complained from what I could see about Harrow the Ninth being pretty different in narrative style from Gideon. I think once you get into it, you really get used to it. It's told in second person, so it's like, you do this and then you do that. But I think it's done for a really good reason, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was nice and fresh, and it was cool to have that narrative style. And if you're interested in Nona and you've already read Harrow, but you didn't like the second person element, Nona is not told in second person. It's told in third person again. Yeah, overall, I just really enjoy this series. So that was everything I read in November, December, and January. These were really good months for reading in terms of the quality, even though I didn't get through as many books as I would have liked. I really enjoyed everything I read, and so that was wonderful. I'm hoping to do wrap-ups a little bit more regularly going forward, especially because I'm planning to read at least 4 books a month this year in order to reach my reading goals. But I'm back in school, so we shall see how quickly I can get through them. I also don't want to rush. I like to, really take my time and enjoy my books. I know that I'm not that fast of a reader, but I plan to read quite a few books this year, so hopefully more consistent wrap-ups in the future. Either way, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you've had a good reading month as well, and have a great night, universe.